What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. It's a Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 56 on a Tuesday, February 6th, 2024. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson, Tom Green, packed show today. We waited a day to do some scheduling things, bumped the Monday show over to Tuesday, and we got a lot to talk about. Staffing changes for OU football. They picked up a commit in the 2025 class, men's and women's hoops. Big weekend of action. Teams are going in opposite directions right now. We'll talk about that. And OU softball season starts on Thursday. Patty Gasso, they held their media day on Monday. James was there. We'll break that down as well. A loaded Tuesday show. We're covering multiple sports, recruiting, on coaching staff. It's a lot going on in the middle of February, and we're going to break it all down. I do want to start the show, guys, though, on a somber note. Early this morning, Toby Keith, most people tuning in know by now, I'm sure, passed away peacefully early this morning. Woke up to the news. The official put out from his social media accounts was, I think, like 2 a.m. Overnight. Most OU fans are very familiar with Toby Keith. Obviously, country music legend, things like that, but a diehard OU fan. And not just an OU fan in the sense of, he liked OU. He's from Oklahoma. Every OU football game for years, home, road, the LNC. On Monday nights, they're playing, they're 10 games below 500, and they're playing TCU or something. He would be there, men's and women's hoops. He goes to tons of softball games and baseball games. Die hard, and very close friends with Joe Castiglione and Bob Stoops and the whole. He's a part of the program, part of the university, without really being a part of the university. He'll be sorely missed. Rest in peace. Thoughts to his family. Wanted to make sure we got that out there. Really tough news to wake up to this morning. Battled with cancer for a few years. He's still been very active. Kind of one of his lasting memories would be after softball won the national title last June. He's out on that stage. I'm sure you guys have seen the video, singing with the team, setting the celebration kind of after party. That's how he was. He was everywhere. Huge part of OU sports. So I want to make sure we acknowledge that off the top. Thoughts again with his family, and he'll be sorely missed, obviously, among OU fans and the OU university and its department and all that good stuff. So, again, thoughts with his family. Rest in peace, the legendary Mr. Toby Keith. So, not easy to pivot off that, but we'll do it as we shift. Obviously, like we said, we got lots of OU football things to get to. We'll start with the surprise kind of bombshell coaching staff move yesterday. Parker Thune, OU Insider, the first report. Jay Nunez, who's the special teams analyst, special teams coordinator, moving on. He's going to Alabama. I was able to quickly confirm it thereafter. Sources told Sooners Illustrated he is, in fact, taking that job and heading over to Alabama. Been with OU the last 2 years. Brent Venables hired him. He was at Eastern Michigan before that. Lincoln Riley infamously just didn't have a special teams coach, a designated special teams coach. Brent Venables addressed that with Jay Nunez. Guys, I guess reaction to Nunez moving on here to Alabama. Do you think OU replaces him? Is this maybe going to be a net good thing? Obviously, we talked about during the season, special teams wasn't great for OU this past season. I guess overall reaction to, kind of an unexpected move in February to lose, again, not an on-field staffer, but kind of a key member of your football, operations staff here. We'll see where they go from here, but, a little bit of a surprise here with Nunez moving on.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of a surprise. I mean, just when you think the coaching carousel is finally stopped, it kind of takes another turn there. So a little bit caught off guard by that. But, like you said, special teams was a little bit of a weakness this year. In his first year with the program, they finished 39th in SP+, the ESPN advanced metric that takes into account tempo and is adjusted for opponents. And, 39th is pretty good. This past season, though, they took a step back to 94th. We've talked about some of the weaknesses there. Obviously, Zach Schmidt missed 6 kicks each of the last 2 years. Was 2 of 5 on attempts of 40-plus yards this past season. They had that blocked punt for a touchdown against Texas in the Red River rivalry game. Gavin Freeman muffed a handful of punts, and it just felt like an adventure every time he was back there fielding it at points this season. But it wasn't all bad. Obviously, once Luke Elzinga kind of emerged as the starter at punter, he was great over the second half of the year, averaged 46.5 yards per punt attempt, had 3 games where he averaged north of 50 yards. They finished top 25 in fewest yards allowed per punt return nationally this season. And then obviously Peyton Bowen emerging as kind of a dynamic playmaker there with a couple blocks, leading the Big 12 in that category. So it was certainly a mixed bag. So it's hard to say right now whether it's going to be a net positive or a net negative. Obviously, he's a guy that, Brent Venables trusted and was comfortable with. And look, he's a big reason that they got Luke Elzinga this past year, because they were both, from a smaller school in Michigan before that. Obviously, Luke Elzinga coming over from Central Michigan, Jay Nunez at Eastern Michigan before being in Oklahoma. So there was some familiarity there. But, yeah, definitely a little bit of a surprise.
It's definitely a surprise. I mean, you kind of start to see what he was trying to do. He was trying to turn things around with some of the guys that he was bringing in. I mean, we talked about a lot that come from the state of Oklahoma. Those guys like Liam Evans, the kicker from Moore, who's ranked number 7 in the nation. And then he tries to bring in Seth Freeman. Well, he didn't try to. He brought in Seth Freeman, who's, the number 1 long snapper in the country, which is something that you don't really think there's rankings for. But he's an outstanding kid. So you got things like that. He's trying to bring guys in to really turn things around, because everybody knew that Oklahoma wasn't playing up to their standards in the special teams section this past year. I mean, everybody understood that. And I saw that he was trying to bring in more guys. So, that type of effort, you kind of appreciate it. And then to have this happen is like, yeah, that's a little surprising, because you thought he was there for the turnaround and really, helping the team out. But it seems like he has to do what's best for him as well. You get a better offer somewhere else, and you got to take it. I mean, it's coaching. So that's college football for you.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what his official title will be at Alabama, because they haven't really publicly announced any of their staff hires outside of Kalen DeBoer. So I'm curious to see, because everybody I spoke to, and from what's been reported, they already had their 10 on-field coaches allotted, basically. So if he's leaving, is he going to be an on-field coach? How are they going to kind of configure that? Is he going to still be an analyst that's overseeing special teams? One thing that is worth noting, their most recent hire, that was, I believe, reported yesterday or the day before, but William Inge, who was the co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach at Washington with Kalen DeBoer, he has a background as a special teams coordinator too. So are they going to work hand in hand overseeing special teams? I'm just really curious to see how that works out, because, if it's a lateral move, is it more money because it is Alabama and they basically print money over there with the football program? But definitely just interesting timing, interesting move. Didn't really see that coming or expect that at this point. But, I'm curious to see where, Oklahoma goes from here. Does, Brent Venables kind of divvy that responsibility to some of the coaches? Because, look, even when you have a special teams coordinator, it's kind of all hands on deck with special teams, because you have a coach that's, working with the punt return unit, one that's working with the punt block unit, one that's working with the field goal unit, one that's working with the kickoff group. There's just a lot of pieces in motion. So I'm curious to see how that kind of shakes out with this staff.
For sure. And like I said, it's funny because Lincoln Riley didn't have a special teams coach, and Oklahoma's special teams, as you would probably guess, were not very good. In 2021, it was a major problem. And Lincoln was asked directly a couple of times, if you thought about bringing in a special teams coach, he always said no, just no wiggle room, shut it down, no interest in doing that. So when Brent Venables hired Jay Nunez, there was a major hallelujah for a lot of fans, because they needed some correcting. And like Tom said, it took a very positive step that first year. Last year went the wrong way, but I certainly, talking to sources, didn't get the impression that there was any friction here. Until a week ago or whatever, the intention was to move into year 3, Nunez, Oklahoma. He was happy at OU. OU was happy to have him back. But then, kind of like James said, college football, Alabama comes a calling. I think this is a pretty hefty pay increase for him. And like Tom said, maybe on field. I don't know. That remains to be seen. But it's a step up in just the job ladder, and couldn't turn it down, sort of a thing. So like Tom said, we'll see where Oklahoma goes. Do they bring somebody in? Do they just community it for the season and then look to address it next year? It's February, so kind of weird timing. But interesting little staff change there, and we'll keep an eye on it and see how it affects the special teams play, which wasn't great, obviously, last year. That was kind of the funny thing, that a lot of the public sentiment, from our VIP members and just kind of looking around, getting the pulse of the fan base, was no loss here because the special teams wasn't great. Again, I get the impression OU liked Jay Nunez, didn't want to lose him, but it could end up being a positive depending on how it goes. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, and the other thing that's kind of interesting is obviously, Jay Nunez is an Oklahoma native, so he's
Right.
leaving his home state, and he's never coached. Him and Kalen DeBoer have never crossed paths, but they both spent time at I believe it was Southern Illinois, just not at the same time together. So there's probably some connections there, and they probably know each other through other coaching connections over their careers. So interesting little tie-in there, just to Yeah, in the coaching industry, when you see moves, it's always about, connect the dotted line, see how they knew each other or where they crossed paths. So that's my guess, is that they probably have some shared contacts from their time at Southern Illinois.
It's been a pretty interesting offseason so far. I mean, it's kind of like all the the people that a lot of the Sooner fans had issues with throughout the season at some point in time, like Dylan Gabriel, Jeff Lebby, Ted Roof, Jay Nunez. I mean, it's weird how it's all like the people that the OU fans kind of had a love-hate relationship with throughout the season, right. And they're all kind of gone now. And it's like, okay, that's some sight to see. So
we'll see how it if these are the right moves.
Yeah, see if it plays out right.
We'll find out. That's a good point. So we'll keep an eye on it. Obviously, whenever we find out if they are making a hire to replace, things like that, we'll let you know. I'm sure we'll talk about it on the podcast as well. Be sure to become a VIP subscriber, Oklahoma247sports.com. We'll keep you posted on that, staffing changes and things like that. On the recruiting side, Oklahoma back on the board in the 2025 class. Had been a little bit, but they brought in Ryan Fodgy, 3-star offensive tackle from, I believe it's Cypress, Texas. Yes, Cypress, Texas. He's our 27th ranked offensive tackle in the class, top 50 player in the state of Texas, which obviously is the best high school football state there is, produces lots of players that Oklahoma has added to the roster over decades and decades. So they bring him in. He's the second offensive lineman in his class, joins Owen Hollenbeck, who you guys have probably heard, listeners to the podcast have probably heard Colin Kennedy talk about several times, as a guy that they really are high on. 11th commit in the class. They're ranked 5th in 2025 right now. It's really early, so rankings, what do you do with it? But when you're high, when you're high in the rankings, you can say, oh, look, we're high. If you're low, you can say, who cares? It's too early. But they're high right now, so you get to pump it with the number 5. What do we think here? Obviously, another offensive line get. This class, especially on the offensive side, is really shaping up nicely early. Lots of receivers. You got Kevin Sperry, a couple of linemen now. Really good offensive group right now, and it is still early. What do we think about Ryan Fodgy being the latest pickup here for Oklahoma?
Yeah, I think a lot of people might kind of, turn their nose up at the, another 3-star commitment. But at this point, because you still have a full year of development and evaluation here. But what I really look at in these types of situations is not so much the rating, but the offer sheet. You look at some of these schools that have offered him: Oregon, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Missouri. Obviously a lot of SEC schools there. Oregon, which is basically SEC way west. The way they kind of recruit and they build their program. So he's a guy that is, very coveted. A lot of schools believe he is a, SEC caliber offensive lineman. And you look at his frame, 6'5", 275 right now before his senior year. He's going to get bigger. Just imagine what a off season in the Jerry Schmidt strength and conditioning program is going to do to him to help shape that body and fill out that frame. And again, offensive lineman, it's just always such a developmental position. But
Tom's typing away at something.
No, my screen went dead for some reason.
Oh, okay. We had breaking news somewhere. All right.
I went back to the login. But offensive line is such a developmental position. You like to see that kind of frame, that the bones are there to work with it. And clearly other big programs see that in him too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good pick. I mean, as we said, each time we get an offensive lineman over at OU, it's a big deal, because that's what everybody's wanting at this point in time, with going into the SEC, is that line of scrimmage, getting offensive linemen, defensive linemen. And I think so far the defensive line class is spectacular as it is. I mean, you don't really need to add much more. You're just adding to an already stacked unit, I think, at this point in time. So getting more offensive linemen is a big deal. And I mean, even with Fudgy, you got another guy and Evan McClure out of Bixby who's coming in as well from 2024. He's a PWO, so he doesn't have the biggest splash of a get, but he's the same exact size as Fudgy right now coming into the SEC. He's going to get ready for his situation. I mean, he just committed to the Sooners, and he's the son of, a 4-year starter in Bruce McClure back in the day. So, I mean, he loves Oklahoma. I mean, his dad loves Oklahoma. It's all there for him as well. So 2 really good pickups for OU. You don't want to, not talk about both of them there, but both of them are pretty good here pretty soon. Yeah.
And I do want to know, too, like Tom kind of said with the rating, and a lot of people see 3-star, and they're like, another 3-star, we want 4 and 5. He's an 89 rating, so he's going to be a 4, more than likely. That's 1 point shy of a 90, which is a 4-star. So most likely, I mean, I'm not going to guarantee it, but most likely by the time he actually signs, he'll be at least a 4. So this is a good get, like James said. It's a good get. You pair him with Owen Hollenbeck and some of the other guys in this group that they're also still chasing. And that 2025 class continues to be really, really good. And we've talked about it with Colin a couple times that the class in the state of Oklahoma is loaded in 2025. Oklahoma's already done a good job getting some of those guys, all those Carl Albert guys, and then Jay Nunez, obviously, who James has seen a couple of times, football and basketball. They're in good shape to put together a really good class, and it's just another piece of that with Ryan Fodgy. And I'll be sure to get Colin's thoughts on the Thursday show also on Fodgy, kind of where he fits in. Coming off that junior day that we talked about it last week, all the momentum they had coming off that. Here's your first splash get off of it with Ryan Fodgy. So good weekend for OU hoops or OU football on the recruiting side.
And I will say, I mean, the analysts at 24/7, I mean, they're very careful with these stars coming out. I mean, you don't want to get to a point where you drop a guy, and so they try to come in low and then push him up. So that's something to keep in mind when you look at guys that are a little bit younger that have their stars already. So it's a chance, as Josh and Thomas said, there's a chance he'll be a 4-star here pretty soon by next year, especially.
100%. So be sure to, again, keep up. Oklahoma 247sports.com. Colin Kennedy all over the recruiting side of it. More commits likely to come before too long. Coming off that junior day momentum. They had another one this past weekend. Talk about that more on the Thursday show. A lot of good things happening for Oklahoma in that 2025 class right now. All right, shifting over, gridiron, hardwood. We'll start with men's hoops, and we'll let Tom bounce out before James and I get into women's hoops and a little bit of softball talk on the way out. That was bad. Oklahoma went to Orlando over the weekend, played UCF, and it was not pretty. It's just the Jekyll and Hyde nature of this team, and it's kind of the nature of the Big 12 because it's just every game is tough. Every game is losable in the Big 12. It's just the way it is. But they go and they just whip Kansas State last Tuesday. I talked about it on the Thursday show. Biggest road win in the Big 12 in nearly a decade for Oklahoma. And they followed up with a stinker against UCF. Offense looked really bad. Nobody could get it going really offensively. Latrey Darthur ended up being your high scorer off the bench. In that game, Oklahoma lost pretty comfortably to the Knights. They come back. They have BYU tomorrow. Tom, so they're still pretty firmly in the tournament. So you're not smashing the red panic button. But the schedule after this week gets tough. They got Kansas and Baylor next week. I mean, you have got to take advantage of these home games, right? And that was not a pretty game on Saturday against UCF. I know that you were out of town. You were on vacation at the time. You may have come back and looked at some highlights. But just where are you at, I guess, temperature check right now for this team after another just rough game on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a pretty rough stretch. They've lost 3 of their last 4. I mean, the Big 12 is just very cannibalistic. You look at the standings, every team has at least 3 losses. Where Oklahoma's at, basically smack dab in the middle of the standings. They're 2 games out of first place, but they're also 2 games up on last place. So this is a very critical week for them. Like you said, they're still pretty comfortably in the field right now. I think even the advanced metrics give them like an 88% chance of being in the tournament at this point. A lot of the projections have them, either a 6, 7, or 8 seed at this point. But it's a big opportunity this week. First, BYU tonight. It's a chance to be on paper their biggest win of the season, like their biggest resume booster.
Yeah.
BYU, they're ranked 21st. Similar record to Oklahoma right now, but they're number 7 in the net rate rankings. They're top 10 team in Ken Palm. They have one of the best offenses in the country and a really solid defense. One of the better 3-point shooting teams in the country too. Like, this is going to be a very tough test for Oklahoma, but also a very big opportunity for them. If they can get right at home and, beat this BYU team, you're right back in the thick of it in the Big 12. And then, this weekend, another game at home, another very winnable game at home against an Oklahoma State team that has not been very good this season, even though they've, picked up a couple big wins. They just have, they're not a great team. But I mean, the Big 12 has been crazy. I mean, we saw it last night. The same Kansas State team that Oklahoma just walloped 20 on the road knocked off Kansas in overtime.
Thinking the same thing. Yeah.
I mean, like the parity in this league is just absurd. And how night in, night out, it could be anybody's game. And that's what Trey Arthur spoke to us about yesterday. He was like, yeah, we know any given night, if it doesn't go our way, there's an opportunity to bounce back. Just the nature of this league, because every game is big. And Porter Moser's message to this team, they know the opportunity that's in front of them against BYU. They know they need to take care of business at home, because they did not the previous time when they lost to Texas and Texas Tech. You need to value these opportunities at home, because winning on the road in this league is just so difficult.
Yeah, Kansas beats Houston pretty soundly, at the Fog over the weekend. Kansas State loses by 20 to OU, and then loses to Oklahoma State, who has been the worst team in the Big 12. And then they turn around and they beat Kansas last night. Like you said, every game in the Big 12 really 1-14 any given Sunday. I mean, it really is. We knew it would be like that coming in, but it's kind of even exceeded expectations. And I think, what did we say coming into the year? 7 Big 12 wins, 8 maybe would be enough to get you in the tournament. There are 4 right now at the halfway point. So you're trending the right way. But again, the schedule after this week gets tougher. You got Kansas again. Now they come to Norman this time, but you got to play Kansas again. You got Baylor next week. You still have to play Houston later on down the road. They come to Norman also. So you got some really big resume builder chances, but those are obviously very tough games. So you have to take advantage of these. Not that BYU's not any good, because they are. They've been one of the bigger pleasant surprises in the Big 12. Like Tom said, top 10 in net ranking. They can really shoot the three. Porter Moser was talking about that yesterday. But it's a chance for a nice win. You got to beat Oklahoma State, especially at home. Really probably need to get both, but especially at home. And then you just kind of see where you go from there. They're still in good shape to make the tournament, things like that, but they gotta reel it in. And this is what we talked about a couple of times. Whenever the skid happened, because it was going to happen, the Big 12 was way too good. Can you get it back on the tracks? And that kind of remains to be seen, because it's kind of been slipping for a couple of weeks now. So big game tonight, really big game. Tom and I will be there at the LNC, 7:00 tip. Be sure to tune in to the site, obviously, for Tom's coverage throughout the game and after the game, and then the YouTube channel for post-game reaction, Porter Moser, and some players afterward for what's sure to be a spicy post-game if they lose, and probably a relief-filled one if they win, because they need this one. They need it.
It's really interesting, just like looking at this team kind of from big picture. Because coming into the year, they were picked to finish 12th in the conference. Even though they've kind of experienced this rough stretch, on the one hand, they're still exceeding expectations based on where they are, based on what we saw in non-conference play. We knew the Big 12 schedule was going to be tough. But on the other hand, you look at how good they looked during that non-conference stretch, and even at the beginning of conference play, and then you're like, man, what happened? So it's like two sides of the same coin. It's just weird to kind of temper expectations after you see such promise early on, but also understanding, just the nature of the Big 12, and that, hey, this was going to be tough regardless. So, I think, even ESPN's latest bracket projections yesterday, I think it had 9 Big 12 teams in the field, with 2 more like just missing the cut. It is a very difficult conference. And like I said, Oklahoma is still in very good shape, but it needs to take advantage of some of these opportunities for these big wins at home. And none of them to this point will be bigger than BYU.
Yeah. Unranked for the first time since November, after the loss to UCF. And we'll see. Like we said, last time they were in this spot with coming off that Cincinnati win, had 2 home games, and it was like, okay, a couple of home games, take care of business. They lost them both. Obviously, they can't have that happen again. So we'll see how they bounce back.
Yeah, and just one thing, look, people are gonna be like, oh man, they're unranked. What happened? Obviously, we discussed this rough stretch, but to provide some context, like they were in the rankings for 10 straight weeks. that's the longest stretch that they've had in the AP poll since that Final Four season in 2015.
I believe it. Yeah.
So, like, this team is making steps in the right direction, even though it's stumbling here and there, because that's just the nature of college basketball. You're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds who, aren't professionals. These aren't NBA players. The variance in college basketball is so much wider than it is in the pro leagues. And you're going to have these stretches that are just clunkers. It's just a matter of, do you have the fortitude, the tenacity to be able to get out of it and get right?
Yeah. And I think you win these 2 games, you're probably back in the poll next Monday. So opportunities there, still they just hit midway point in the Big 12. That was game 9, 9 more to go, plus the Big 12 tournament. So still some runway here to get back on track and to be feeling good about things going into the postseason. And presumably back in the tournament for the first time under Porter Moser, first time in a few years for that team. All right, Tom, we'll let you slide out. James and I are going to hit some women's hoops. They had another huge win. They just keep winning. It's insane. And then we'll do some softball season preview as well on the back end.
All right, catch you guys later.
All right, Tom.
All right, so the women's team, James, going the complete opposite direction of the men's team. It's been kind of crazy. You talked about that a little bit last week, how it's like their seasons are just like Oklahoma can't have both teams playing well at the same time. The women's team won Bedlam in Stillwater over the weekend. They're now back in the top 25. They're in first place in the Big 12 all alone because Kansas State lost again on Saturday after Oklahoma beat them. I mean, I'm a little speechless at the turnaround. It's really, we talk about every week, and it just keeps going. They just keep winning. What can you say, man? I mean, they're playing really good basketball right now. They just keep winning. That's all I can say.
Mm-hmm. Everything has gone their way so far, I feel like, as well. So, like, we talked about, the 4 teams they beat early on, the newcomers to the league. I mean, those teams aren't very good in the Big 12. Let's just be honest at this point, right? So you have that, and you kind of, that kind of gives you momentum as you go forward. And then you get, Texas and Kansas State. I mean, Kansas State, they're missing a key player here and there, and you really take advantage of it, right? So it's like you're winning those games that you absolutely need to win. And then you're taking advantage of every opportunity these teams are giving you. And then, Skylar, as we talked about, she's just been outstanding this year. I mean, just she took over. I wrote an article about this as she's just like blossomed into this, the main scorer and the main leader of this team. It's amazing what she has done because she was just coming off the bench just last year. And now she's the bona fide star on this team. I know they like to be a balanced unit and talk about it that way, but this is what it is. Skylar's the bona fide star of this team. If she doesn't go, this team isn't as good as they are as of right now. And so with her leading the way and with Coach Jenny doing her thing, I mean, they're really good right now. There's something to be excited about. They're finally back into the top 25, which is something they've been trying to get back to all season. Like like we said earlier, the men's basketball and the women's basketball are just polar opposites as it goes on. Women started a little slow, down the stretch of their a non-conference schedule, and the men were just going nuts. I mean, getting all what were they at, like 11 at some point? Is that right? They were up there pretty high.
So, top 10 when they played.
Yes. I mean, like it was crazy how much it's changed since then. So I mean, OU's just been going on the run. They're taking every advantage they've had. They're playing cohesive basketball. I mean, they're rocking at this point. Number 1 in the Big 12. I mean, can't really say doing too bad there. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive.
Anytime you win Bedlam, it's good in any sport. Had another post-game kerfuffle a little bit there with, I guess, J.C. Hoyt, the Oklahoma State coach. She addressed the crowd after every game, which I didn't know that was a thing. I guess the OU fans were kind of drowning her out a little bit. They were getting a little Boomer Sooner thing going on. Obviously, most people probably remember last year they tried to do their senior day after Oklahoma just won the Big 12 at Gallagher. That created a whole, again, kerfuffle. Bedlam, man. Bedlam, it's the best. There's always something with Bedlam. It's too bad that that's the last time, although they have to return the trip to Norman. Obviously later in the season here in a couple weeks. But another opportunity, TCU on Wednesday comes to the LNC. They go to Ames, and then a couple of big ones with Baylor, West Virginia. Those are both top 25 matchups as of now. Obviously, there'll be a new poll next week, but keep doing it. I mean, the schedule's there. The runway, the treadmill, whatever I'm looking for here is there for them to keep running and keep this thing going because the Big 12 doesn't really have. I mean, Kansas State's really, really good. Texas is really good, but they just beat K-State. There's not a whole lot standing in their way if they continue to play like this of maybe going back-to-back and winning the Big 12 again. Still got a long way to go, but the pieces are there to do it. So it's exciting. I look forward to seeing what they can do on Wednesday.
Exactly. I mean, as you said, like I said, it's just following. Everything's been falling into place for them. I mean, it's been working really well, and they've worked hard enough to take advantage of each thing. So I mean, it's just a good situation to be in right now. They're leading it, and they're doing their thing right now. So that's pretty much it.
100%. Look forward to seeing what they do Wednesday against TCU. James been covering that team very well, so be sure to keep up with the site, his coverage of women's hoops.
Also, you talked about the Oklahoma State. That the Lexi Keys coming back to Oklahoma State.
That's true. We got to bring that up. Yeah,
they added a little bit to it. I mean, yes. I mean, she played for Oklahoma State last couple of years and switched to OU and has done really well for OU. So I mean, that was pretty fun to see at that time.
Yeah, she felt comfortable. There at Gallagher.
But she got started pretty hot there. A couple of threes just knocked them down. So I mean, she's played in that gym so many times. I bet it's nothing to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. Probably felt. There was some comfort level going in there. No, good, great you pointed that out because that was a return trip for her, which has been more bedlam transfers the last couple of years than like the previous decades before. I don't know what it's become like a normal thing. Mm-hmm. Both in football's had it, baseball's had it, women's hoops like we just talked about has had it, and Lexi Keys the latest, and she got her revenge in there. So
softball's had it. We asked Trace Ford about it too. Yeah, like what should you say to the other people that are doing it? It was like, I can't remember what he said. It was like, keep the noise down or something like that. Stay out of the noise. But it was pretty. It's a pretty bizarre situation right now where we're at the time. So
it is. On that note, you talk about softball. Mm-hmm. Softball season starts on Thursday. It always kind of sneaks up the Diamond Sports because you're just in the heat of hoops and spring football's around the corner, and then it's like, holy crap, they play this week, and here we are. Softball opens up their season on Thursday. Tournament play, they don't come to Norman until March, which will be at Love's Field. The plan is for that stadium to be ready to go by their home opener here in a few weeks. James, you were at the media day yesterday, Monday evening. Patty Gasso's press conference is on the YouTube channel. If you want to go check that out, get some of her thoughts on the team. Obviously, I mean, goes without saying almost at this point, they're number one in the preseason poll. They've won 3 straight national titles. They are the favorites to make it 4. It's not a given. It feels that way, but it's not. It's not a given. They do have a lot of key pieces, names that that fans know, that have watched their runs through Oklahoma City the last several years, that are still around. Jada Coleman still around. Tiare Jennings still around. James, what's your thoughts here just in general going into the opener on Thursday? And is there any chance, I guess, or Oklahoma's going to win the national title again, right? I mean, like, that's what I'm trying to get at here is how stunned would it be if they didn't? The team doesn't seem to have a lot of flaws. Just how do you kind of size up this year's team, I guess, in relation to maybe the previous years? And what are you watching for this weekend as they open up their season?
I mean, from what I've got from the press conference, I mean, I see a very comfortable team. Nobody seems to be panicking at all. Nobody seems to be thinking about way down the line. Everybody is. I mean, it's Jada Coleman said it. She's living where her feet are. She's just worried about right now. Their team is very comfortable. They know about everything people on the outside are saying about the team. Patty Gasso talked about it's hard to get this team to feel like they're the hunt. I mean, they're the hunting ones. They're only hunted now. Like she said, I always try to motivate them as if they were hunting somebody else. But now I just can't do it. She's like, I can't do it. Like everybody knows how good they are. So it's going to be a different model for this team this year. Just trying to figure that out and get to that 4th straight title. I mean, but they also have the win streak. The win streak is still, for them as well. They have the nation's longest win streak of consecutive games. So it's a lot that goes on. I mean, some of the most important things I got from it is, the captains this year are going to be Kenzie Hansen and Tiare Jennings, which, I mean, that's what people are kind of waiting on to see who is going to be the captains now that, some have graduated. And Tiare Jennings is actually going to move from second base to shortstop, which is an article I have up here probably by the time this podcast gets out. I mean, some of those big moves there. I mean, Patty Gasso said the outfielders also, having some battles here still. There's still some battles out there. Now, Jada Coleman and Riley Boone are going to be starters, but, different rotations throughout the year are still up for debate at this point in time. So there's some movement here. There's some movement. It's just players getting back into the feel of things and getting back into the swing of things. And I mean, hey, it's this week, man. It's just about that time. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's gonna be fun, man.
Yeah, they're in the Puerto Vallarta College Challenge, which is down in Mexico, I believe. They play Utah Valley on Thursday morning, and then they play Duke, who's actually a top 10 team.
Yeah, pretty good.
Later in the day on Thursday. Yeah, I mean, like we said, a lot of the key pieces are back. Names Obviously, the big one is Jordy Ball not there. James, I did the reaction way back last summer, feels like forever ago, when she made that move to Nebraska. So you don't have her, but they brought in Kelly Maxwell from Oklahoma State, who we kind of alluded to. Nicole May still around, and they have a lot of other young arms, as they always do, coming up through the ranks. And it's going to be fun to see them do their thing. It's always fun. Obviously, Oklahoma fans love softball, and we were going to be covering it very well on the site. James will be all over it all season long. And if all goes according to plan, we'll be in Oklahoma City at the end of this thing, covering it all the way wire to wire. They should be a force to be reckoned with again, as they always are. Not a team with a lot of flaws, and like James said, kind of just really the only that can ever be. I've kind of been saying this for a couple of years, but especially going into this year, going for your fourth in a row, the only that can really beat that team, that program, is themselves. It's just a lack of motivation and a lack of having the edge, because it's got to be hard to have that edge when you've dominated for multiple years. I mean, Jada Coleman, Cole May, that class, all they know is national titles. Literally, that's all they've ever done, and very, very few losses, even in there in the regular season. So if they stay locked in, it's gonna be really tough to ever beat them, especially twice in the postseason format. So excited! I'm excited to see what they do this week, and I'm excited for Love's Field whenever that opens here in a few weeks. That first home game is gonna be.
I'm glad you pointed it out, because Patty Gasso said she's actually waiting to get a chance to actually coach and teach again. And right now, she just has these players that know exactly everything to do. So she's just like sitting around. She said, next year I'll be able to really coach again. So like you see a lot of what Jada Coleman and them said. They're kind of just helping out the younger players. At this point, they do something, and most of what they're doing is just like, okay, teaching these guys how to do it for when we leave. I mean, Alyssa Brito. Jada Coleman said Alyssa Brito is also part of that unit, even though she's only been there a couple of years, because she transferred from a different school. So, I mean, there's some things they got to work out there with just those older players helping out the younger players, and that's just how much it is right now. It's just pretty cool situation to be in. And you talk about the stadium. Patty Gasso also dropped the bomb saying the stadium really isn't going to be all the way finished until like mid-April. Yeah. So they're going to be able to play on it for the games, but the team won't be able to necessarily just move in their lockers and things like that until about mid-April. So, kind of different, there, but
it'll be like a soft launch
for them. Yeah. I mean, the fans will still get their full experience. They'll get to, be out there. I don't think the trophy room and all that stuff's going to be done yet, but we'll see. We'll see where it's at that point in time.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I got to say the scoreboard, though, in the shape of the Oklahoma silhouette, the state silhouette, sick. That's great. That's a great design. I love that. So that's awesome.
Coach Gasso said when she first heard that was going to happen, she was like, "Man, that's so corny. I don't think we should do that." And then she saw it and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is cool!" Like that's what she said at the press yesterday.
This has come from a guy too that here in about 2 months from now, when OU has their spring game and they use the spring game logo, which is the state with the OU logo inside the state, the white Oklahoma that most people see. I've been in favor of making that just the permanent midfield logo for a while, because that logo is awesome. So I'm a sucker for the Oklahoma silhouette, I guess. I love it. It's great. So excited for that coming up this week. And they have a few tournaments, like I said, then they do come home at the very beginning of March for that first Love's Field Open. And that'll be really cool. I may even have to join James for that. I may make my way down to Norman.
It's gonna be awesome, man. We need to get your video skills out there.
Yeah, I will plug too. Like I said, Patty Gasso's press conference is on the YouTube channel from yesterday. The baseball mini day is tomorrow, Wednesday. Their season opens next week down in Arlington. I'm planning to go down for the opener next week. So Diamond Sports are here. We're going to have you covered all season long. James is going to be working that softball beat. I'm going to be all over baseball. And we'll have you covered all season long on the site for what the Diamond Sports are doing. Obviously, this overlap period with basketball is hectic, but we'll cover it well. And then spring football will be here before you know it. Busy times. The spring is a lot of fun. It's low-key as busy as our entire year is when all these sports kind of mesh at once, but it's a great time. The weather gets better. It's just beautiful. This is a great time of year. We're getting close to a lot of great things. Postseason basketball, it's great time of year. So I'm excited for what we got coming up. All right, I think that's it. Be back on Thursday. Colin Candy will be on the show, talk about all the latest recruiting news. Obviously, I'll get his breakdown of Fodgy. Anybody else is expecting a pop here very, very soon, coming off another Junior Day weekend. We'll obviously talk about any other OU staffing change, maybe some rumors on who's going to replace Jay Nunez. We'll also, of course, recap the week that was for OU Hoops. Big game tonight, OU BYU. Tom will be there at the LNC. Hope you tune in then. The three of us will be back on Monday to recap all the latest OU football and basketball and probably opening weekend for softball too. We'll talk to you then. For Tom Green earlier, James E. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys next time on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.